Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, the wind's toned down just a little bit from my video earlier today, so I thought it might be all right to come outside, and I decided to show you an area that I've put a little bit of work on so far, but not a lot. But it is something that we want to do. We're going to start working on here in the next probably days or weeks to get this developed. And there's a point to all this, not just showing you something. This is a way that you folks can have a much more sustainable garden, sustainable food production on your property. Most all of you, even if you've never gardened, you're familiar with the standard traditional, garden in a square with rows and that kind of stuff. But I encourage you to look into more of permaculture, of just a natural way of raising food. And permaculture is a term that's almost gotten perverted in a way over the years. But the main idea is to, instead of working against nature to grow food, which is what you're typically doing in a standard traditional garden, where you're constantly fighting against weeds and pests and all that kind of stuff, and you gotta bring in water, and you constantly are bringing in different fertilizers or manure or compost or whatever. Instead, try to do as much as you can with just working with nature. If you go out into a woods like this, and of course things are just starting to green up, so it doesn't look extremely lush. There's things growing all over the place. There's constant edibles being found, and mushrooms and different things like that, because it's very lush and it's a complete ecosystem in here. And so the idea is learning to garden in the way that nature was created. And so that's what I want to encourage you today. Now, what we're doing here, just to kind of show you around, and again, it looks really thick in here. So this little area of the property is kind of unique. It almost creates like a little island. Now, you guys have seen me probably many times standing down by the big creek. There is a smaller creek that flows into that big creek. And that creek is, you can't see it, we'll go over there here in a minute, but it's right over here. And so that creek runs that way. And then there's a small little area. I don't know if you can't see it here, but there's a kind of a backwater creek that comes in that way. And what it does is it creates kind of a little island here on the property. And it's elevated enough that this area doesn't flood. The creek is deep enough that it flows on through. And so what we're going to do, and it's also fairly close to the house. So our goal is to clear out a lot of this underbrush and to build kind of a food forest in here. And we started on this last year, right before winter hit. And so I didn't get much. You can see like this here, this is all stuff that I've cut down, and it just needs to be hauled out. But I know it's probably not coming through the way I see it, but trust me, it's pretty cool. And so the idea is to come in here, and there's some red buds here, to put some trees that produce food, a lot of fruit trees, and then to also put some bushes, vines that produce food. Blackberries grow on the property. There's actually some blackberries in here somewhere. Maybe some blueberries, raspberries, those also grow. There's gooseberries in this. And so encourage those to grow and clean it out enough that it gives them a chance to grow good on their own. Put some fruit trees in here. And then also, there are a lot of things that do pretty well in a shady forest area. A lot of your medicinal and culinary herbs work really well. And there's some garden plants that work pretty well here too. And so that's what will be put in here. Now, it's pretty bright in here because the canopy, let me tilt this back, the leaves really haven't come in yet. I mean, there's a few trees that are just starting to have leaves, but these big oak trees like that one right there, they haven't even really started doing anything yet. You can see little buds on them. And so once those leaves come in, this area is a lot more shaded, and it's a nice little area in here. And I'm not showing you all this to kind of show off. That's not the point. But I'm gonna walk down here to the creek The point is that it's very possible that some of you could do something like this. The sun's glaring, but we'll get down here. All right, so this is the little creek. I've shown it in a few videos, and this is part of the border for this little, and of course the land goes that way, but this is part of the border for this little kind of islandy area, and it creates just a nice little spot. It's about the size of a city lot for a house, average city house lot. And let me get over here and show you what's great about doing this kind of gardening in an area like this, in a wooded forestry area, because everything's decomposing as the leaves fall, as plants die, as limbs fall down. It's all being decomposed back into the ground, and so you don't have to worry about you don't really have to worry about putting compost and all that. It's all natural. Now the ground's still pretty wet because, well, it rained all day yesterday, and it's rained quite a bit lately, but you can get the good idea. Let me show you. Here's some of that's the kind of soil that we have here in this wooded area to work with. And it's going to be better than probably anything you buy at the store. So eventually, and this is a kind of a priority. So when I say eventually, I mean soon. We'll be out here cutting all this back, a lot of it, not all of it, but cutting a lot of it back and developing this. And then this one creek over here, and I'll show you probably later on when I actually start to work on it. I'm building a little footbridge that goes over that creek. Most of the time it's shallow enough that, you know, you can step across and it's not a big deal. But in the rainy weather, it gets several inches deep. And so I'm going to build a small little footbridge to go over that creek to get into this area. Now, what can you do like this? Maybe you don't have this exact spot. I mean, you don't have to have the creeks creating a little island here to do this. You can do this in any area where there's woods, and you can do it in the backyard. You don't have to have necessarily a food forest area. You can just do it instead of your normal gardening. You can do more of a natural gardening and allow certain things to build up around you and around the garden spot. When I garden, I allow certain wild plants to grow up in the garden. I'm not in there killing out every possible weed. There are some weeds that are really beneficial, and so I allow them to grow in the garden. There's other herbs and flowers that I put in the garden also that's beneficial. And so when you do that, and instead of constantly tilling and constantly putting chemicals or even more natural fertilizers, you're not allowing kind of nature to do its part. You're not allowing how it was created to work. And it ends up creating a weaker garden. It's only capable of doing what it's doing if you're constantly watering it or if you're constantly feeding it. And what you really want to do from a preparedness, from a self-sufficient standpoint, is to develop food plots on your property, food and medicinal plots, that are very, very self-sufficient, that don't need really any, if any, but very little assistance. Because what happens when you don't have access to a large amount of water? Maybe you have enough water for your family, but are you capable of providing enough water for a huge garden? Say the grid goes down, and you may say, well, I got a well, and I got one of them hand pumps to put on my well. Do you realize how much pumping you're gonna have to do to water a pretty good sized garden? A lot. The amending the garden, if you're going off and you're getting manure and things every year to put on your garden, if things got bad, there's a possibility you may not be able to get to that. You may not be able to go get it. You don't know. And so the idea is to create edible places on your property that need very, very little help. And so that's what we're doing here. And then there's another spot on the end of the property that we're also going to be working on. I think we're going to do this first. but I just wanted to show you this. If you want to read more, there's lots of books on this. There's a guy named Rick Austin. I'm trying to remember, Secret Garden Survival, something like that is his book. There's a video, he has some videos on YouTube, and then of course he has that book, and it's a real good one, and I like his work because he's talking about gardening and self-sufficient gardening and permaculture from a preparedness perspective, which is hard to find. That you find a lot of the, you know, back to the earth, natural, kind of hippie, which I have no problem with that, books and teachers on how to do that, but they don't talk about it from a preparedness, what you should be doing that will make that last, that you can depend upon that no matter what happens. And so that's what we're trying to do here also. And I just wanted to show you that this is one of those areas, and as we develop this and do more in here, of course I'll be bringing you out here more often. But and it looks really bad, but that's fine. I wanted you to see the before and see that, I mean, like, see here, there's limbs, get my finger right, there's limbs down here and limbs over there, and this is where I've been coming in here and clearing some of this out, and we'll get in here and get on it a lot more on it, get it all cleaned out, and then I've already got ideas of what to plant in here to get stuff growing. And then we'll have a kind of an edible food forest in this area, kind of like a little secret garden that we can come and maybe even have a nice little place to sit and enjoy what's being grown. But the big point is to have something that's going to grow on its own for the most part, and then we don't have to contribute to it. And so that is something that I want to encourage you, what you're doing. It's fine, it's good to have your standard traditional garden, rows and all that kind of stuff, but they're not very sustainable. You usually have to do something to them, and even if you don't, as in outside the home, you're usually watering and doing that kind of stuff, and you don't know that you'll always have access to that much resource to keep them going. So I would encourage you to also look into this type of gardening, because it's by far the most sustainable way. You may not be able to produce massive amounts of food, but you can certainly produce plenty of food for your family doing this way. So research it, look what you have on your property, and like I said, just because you may not have an area like this, you can still do it. You can still do it in your backyard. You know, if you live in a little suburban neighborhood, you can build one in your backyard, and there's people that's done it. So I encourage you to look into that, and I will bring you back out here as we progress on this project. All right, folks, thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.